Greetings to one and all. Hope everybody's doing well. Feeling really swell. We're getting ready to get down with the get down on another day. That's right. Welcome to a new day here at Black Fact Central with Doc Ock at noon and 9. Coming to you live with our proverb of the day. One camel does not make fun of the other camel's hump. One camel does not make fun of the other camel's hump. Now that's just something to think about for a minute. One camel doesn't make fun of the other camel's hump. All right. And as you're going to see today, all of these, as we do every day, we try to tie all of our pieces together. We try to find a thread that ties them together to pass on our message of the day. So our poem for today is actually, quote unquote, a love poem. Now, we don't usually read love poems too much, but in this case, I think it's appropriate because when I first started reading this poem, just to see if I'd want to include it or not, I fell in love with the poem. So I'm going to read you a love poem that I just fell in love with. I haven't read the whole thing. So the first time you hear it is the first time I read it. Here we go. Because I'm channeling these poets. And this one is out of Mudcloth Roots by V.S. Chochezi and Stajabu. And it is also a, what's the word for it? I forgot. Well, it's out of their book, Mudcloth Roots. Oh, and the poem is actually one of Stajabu's poems. That's what I wanted to say. So here we go. This poem is called Black Man. Your heart is carved from a substance of deepest hues. From midnight sky, you move through millenniums, leaving mindsets in your comet trails. They are searching for you in the streets, black man. They want you on suspicion because you fit the description. They don't know who you are and what price they're going to pay for their ignorance one day. Black man, come close so I can hold you in my peaceful arms for a few minutes rest. It is your essence that presents itself to my aura. You are larger than measurable time, black man. You eclipse everything else in sight. You light the night with your third eye. Your magnificent historical intelligence can never be forgotten. Just listening to your breath is my humblest gift, and to close your eyes in my presence, the greatest compliment. To close your eyes in my presence, the greatest compliment. Black man. Wonderful poem. Thank you, Stajabu. We love you, sister. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's a great poem. I love that poem. First time I read it, but I love it already. What can I say? I'm like that. I'm a sucker for a pretty face or pretty words, even better. All right. Meanwhile, this one is out of the book Black Fire. Okay. 1968 vintage. African responses to Malcolm X. Brother, you think your life is so sweet that you would live at any price? Does mere existence balance with the weight of your great sacrifice? Or can it be you fear the grave enough to live and die a slave? Oh, brother, let it be said that when you're dead and tears are shed, that your life was a stepping stone which your children crossed upon. Look each foeman in the eye, lest you die in vain. Lest you die in vain. Now, this essay and poem by Leslie Alexander Lacey goes like this. Thus spoke Malcolm X in the Great Hall at the University of Ghana, Legon, Tuesday, May 12, 1964. These were his final words. They were addressed to a hostile and young American-trained Ghanaian geologist who had accused Malcolm X at the end of an emotional and lively question period of bringing to Africa the gospel of racial violence. Suddenly, there were more words. A student who sat near the podium from which Malcolm spoke stood and pointed his finger into the area where the geologist sat and shouted passionately, "Throw that useless man out!" The crowd supported the student's demand with cries and shouts of approval. Then the geologist became the victim of a special kind of violence. 3 students, some said his own students, unceremoniously threw him out of the hall. Before Malcolm X could take his seat and be properly thanked by the unpopular Marxist forum which had presented him, the spirit of criticism which the young intellectual tried to introduce gave way to what can be called the spirit of approval. And what a spirit! It could tolerate nothing short of complete acceptance of Malcolm X. The cheers of approval came first. The students stood and shouted at the top of their voices praises in different Ghanaian languages, which produced a monotonous, steady, balanced, and comforting refrain. Brother Malcolm, Brother Malcolm, oh, Brother Malcolm. The cheers gave way to chants of approval and the shedding, and in some cases, the destruction of English-made wool academic gowns, which the students happily wore to such occasions. This practice, the ruling convention, People's Party, had long and adamantly criticized, but due to the propaganda methods which it had employed, had been unable to change. The cheers and chants of approval were so tremendous that it produced what Lebret Hess, chairman of the Marxist Forum and a third-year law student, called the Ghanaian violent elation. And it was as violent as a tropical storm, sudden, complete, collective, shaking every nail in a great hall which had not stood as a symbol of Ghanaian freedom and independence, but rather as a tribute and a reminder of the tradition borrowed from British intellectual history. I watched Malcolm's face as he stood again and again, trying in his humble and somewhat awkward way to acknowledge his thanks to those who had approved of his message. The heat which the great hall generated had already begun to take effect on all of us. Malcolm's face was covered with perspiration, but it mixed well with the tears in his eyes and the smile on his face. I had seen Brother Malcolm's face before in America many times and in many audiences. I had seen crowds cheer him, extol him, and shout to him as their deliverer. I had seen his faces and many moods, his happy moments in Harlem and Chicago, and I had seen his face filled with depression and outrage because another black brother had sold out, or worse yet, refused to fight because he believed that he could appeal to the conscience of white America and overcome its racism. But there was something in his face that evening which I had never seen before. At first glance, I thought it was his small beard that made the difference, for I had never seen him with one before. He'd always had that clean-cut Muslim look, and somehow the beard didn't fit that image. But the second glance, a deeper look, was more revealing. Malcolm's face was new because it was filled with the youth and excitement of those black students who identified with him. And he was awkward too, like a young father who loves his newly born son, but hasn't quite discovered the correct way to pick up and hold the child. The result is that he becomes debilitated by his own happiness and forgets about his ineptitude and what a proud father he could be. Unlike his children of Africa, of African descent in America, these children would grow up, develop in a free society. They would be black and beautiful. Most would develop, would be brave, and all would be free. They would create their own standard of beauty and excellence, create their own history, and worship their own memories. And one day, they would be men and women, have power and greatness, which, as Nkrumah said, is indestructible because it is built not on fear, envy, and suspicion, nor won at the expense of others, but founded on hope, trust, friendship, and directed to the good of all mankind. These things Malcolm felt in his heart, and the portrait was produced in his face. Indeed, he was a picture of self-containment, and as Julian Mayfield said later, the white man was off his back. But the change in Malcolm's face, though important and heartwarming, was less politically relevant than what appeared to be a radical change in the students' behavior. Indeed, the way in which they had responded to Malcolm and all that he represented was unbelievable. Why was their behavior unbelievable? The Lagonites, as the students at the university were called, were considered by the CPP to be more conservative than the conservatives and more English than the English. In fact, party newspapers and government propaganda had for years used a wide range of epithets to describe them, but the most common were reactionaries, ivory towerists, stupid conservatives, and possessors of neo-colonialist mentalities. The following account, taken from the major CPP news organ, the Evening News, was a typical editorial. The reactionary students at the University of Ghana have failed to comprehend in clear focus the true significance and meaning of political independence and the terminology of the new imperialism. Due to this failure, there has not been produced a frame of reference which is able to embrace and understand the objective conditions of Africa, of Ghana, and of Africa. Lacking a political consciousness, the Lagonite is not willing and able to sacrifice himself for something larger and nobler than his own personal and private interest. The students, end quote, the students on their part rejected these types of criticism as unsound and unacceptable. They felt that the CPP practiced little of what it preached, that in Nkrumah's politics of the one-party state, because of its limited dimensions and political cultism, was not structurally nor ideologically flexible enough to utilize correctly the constructive and creative skills that Lagon was designed to produce. The students felt that the CPP really wanted to control the university, and as it controlled other social institutions, using revolutionary language to create guilt feelings among the student body, while it perpetuated its true non-revolutionary character at the expense of the Ghanaian people. Moreover, since the students were unable and afraid to register their political grievances openly, they showed their contempt for CPP rule by using party newspapers, as supplementary toilet tissue, and also by intellectually harassing party or government officials who visited and spoke at the university. So we're going to break off right there. We'll carry on with this one tomorrow. I thought it was an interesting piece. I haven't read the whole piece, but I have read parts of it. I do believe I got to that part about the supplementary toilet tissue piece because that sounded real familiar. But, you know, I'm reading this, and I said I was going to read things that related to something other than COVID-19. Okay, that's how I began this whole train of thought way back in March. And for the most part, that's what we're doing. But at the same time, I want to be able to present ideas, thoughts, cultural expressions that come out of African American, Black life, Pan-African communal living. Okay, I wanted to present those kind of things. So I'm going across the board. Okay. And the name of this book is Black Fire. So what else would you expect to find in it but purity, black fire? And that particular piece there is not one of the ones that we have heard quoted from many times ad infinitum or ad nauseum, as it may be. It's not one. It's not that. Is not this one. Is not one of those pieces. So I figured, why not? I'll go ahead and read it after reading that John Henry Clark piece the other day. So just to give you an idea of where we're going, keep on tuning in. This is Doc Ock at noon and 9, live streaming one more time from the Black Facts headquarters in Kent, Ohio. We'll see you black here at 9 o'clock this evening. Peace out until then.